Hey everybody. So this is my first ever video that I'm taking that actually has audio. Everything that I've done to this point has all been time-lapse videos that I've been doing. So bear with me. I'm learning how to do this. One of the things that I've really enjoyed doing throughout my career that I've done is that I love to teach other people. But keep in mind that while I love to teach other people, there are always other ways to do things. So the way I do things may not be the best thing for you. So experiment with what you do and just figure out the best way for you to do it. So take what I do, experiment, and figure out what works best for you. But today's video, we're going to focus on the best way to prep up an epoxy tumbler. So I actually have several cups here. And my favorite thing to do is take some of the old cups, like you see here. This is one that has a lot of the design has rubbed off from several months, years of use. Not even sure what this design originally was, but I take the design off, clean it up, get it ready to go, and eventually it turns into something similar to this. This is one, it's almost ready to go, but it needs one more good sanding. I can feel some bumps around the top. Normally should have been the last coat, but I just felt one little bitty bump around the top and one little bitty bump around the bottom. But that would be a video for another time to show you all this method. So today is just going to be a focus on how to prep up a cup. And you can do this with any type of old cup. I have multiple cups sitting here ready to go. I've got this one. This one was done. And you can do this with all types of different coating. It just takes a little bit more prep work. This one was done with just some Cricut lettering and designs. I've done hydro flasks. These are fun. Just takes a lot more time and prep work. This is another one that is really interesting to do. This one was a Cricketed cup. This one has already been prepped up, ready to go, but it's been sitting, waiting to be epoxied. And then this one is just store-bought, uh, just plain Jane has a colorful design to it, but I want to take the color off and make it something prettier for somebody else. And right now, I do it for fun because it's what I enjoy to do. So, without further ado, the best thing to do, I've found, you want to focus on first is getting these designs off. And what works best for me is just take and scrape off as much of this design as possible. Some people will sand it off. Some people will use removers and all kinds of different things. I just find it easier to scrape it. See, it's already coming right off. Part of the prep work, we will end up sanding it anyway. So don't be afraid to just take a sander to it, sandpaper to it, because you do end up sanding it anyway. It does get kind of messy, but it's all part of the process. There will be, depending on what type of design is on there, possibly some residual glue. You may need to use some, either alcohol or, for those of you who know the trick, use WD-40 to get the residual glue off of there. But the biggest thing is to just get it all off, get it to, the bare metal that's underneath. One of the things I have not tried, I've seen some people do, is doing the epoxy on some of the clear cups. that looks really fun to do. I can't wait to try that. So you just keep working at it till you get all the old design off. This can take a while. So at this point, we'll just fast forward. One thing I did want to note here is that there is a tag still on the bottom of the cup, I just noticed. And so I just scraped it away and then used some alcohol to clean the residual glue off of here. Okay. There you can see that the vast majority of the design is gone. The reason why I use a scraper because it gums up the sandpaper. So the more of the old design you can get off, the less sandpaper it ends up taking. Now, what the whole reason why you want to sand it down is because these also have a film on there that will keep the epoxy from sticking on there. And why you don't have to worry about using a scraper is because you're going to sand it down anyway to create that groove for the epoxy and paint and primer to all stick to. So I'll explain why you use the paint and primer after in a further video. So stand by for that in the future, and I will let you know. But one thing to keep in mind: always keep some rags around to wipe it down as you're going along if you need to inspect it further. Um, I just keep these generic rags laying around. I generally just use regular alcohol for wiping things down for just about everything. Sometimes when I get to the end, I use some acetone if something's really bad, can't get it off. But for the most part, majority of things that need to come off, alcohol does just fine. Some higher content isopropyl alcohol. Once you get to a good point, then the majority of that sticky residue is now come off. It's that simple. She's good and wiped off. And now just turn to sanding. So now once you get to this point, you can use whatever pattern you like. Me, I just find some good, rounding sanding. The big point is to get as much of that film, get all the film off, and get some good grooves cut into it. This is some 220 grit sandpaper that you want to use. Pardon me looking down. My screen that I'm looking at, my camera's up here, screen's down here. Like I said, this is my first time doing a video, recording for y'all to learn from me. So, like I said, pardon me looking down. I'm learning. I continue to learn every single day. And that's why I'm trying to help y'all learn and maybe make it more enjoyable for you to do something good for you. So just continue to sand it down. And one thing you'll notice, some of these areas where some of the residual design didn't quite come off with the sander, it's coming off just fine with the sandpaper. And where the design would have stuck to the sandpaper, it's all just sandings. And you'll see all this stuff that's coming off right here is all just that film and little bits of the cup. So it's really nothing to worry about. Just keep going in your circular motion. Now, one of the things that I have found, if the 220 grit it really is not taking, if you have some residual design off, or like on this cup that has the, the really thick outer coating, I may have to go to a 120 grit or even an 85 or 60 grit sandpaper to get this really thick coated stuff off of there. I have done that before. I've even taken my electric sander to these things. It gets really noisy, really messy, but it does come off. So don't be afraid to be creative and have a lot of fun with it. You can see I've pretty well got the top side done on this, and you'll see that's what's left on the sandpaper. And the cup, the whole top side, you can see the top compared to the bottom. This whole top side has been sanded. You can see the swirls that I've made in here compared to the bottom. Bottom is still nice and, coated with the coating that they put on here, along with some of the still residual design, whereas the top has, the sanded. And then I just flip it over. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. If you are, put some rubber gloves on. I keep rubber gloves for using the epoxy. So, but you end up having to wash the cup anyway after you're all done. And that's part of the, the whole process. So I don't worry about getting my hands dirty. You might worry about getting your hands dirty. It's simple. Just put some rubber gloves on. And I always make sure to overlap when I move to the next area. That way it reduces the risk of missing a section here. And as you're sanding, you'll be able to see when you've gotten through it. And I keep going around until I, sand it a couple times over that same section. And then I move down to the very bottom section. And this is when it's got this little lip right here. This is when it can get a little tricky because you do want to get down into this lip. But I do the flat surfaces first. So that's getting the flat surfaces. You'll notice that there's still an unsanded area right here where the gap of the bottom meets right here. And even though these aren't the, the long withstanding pressurized cups that that will keep cold or keep hot for a while. One of the things I've learned doing these is that after you epoxy them, they actually hold cold or heat for a lot longer. It insulates them a lot further, a lot longer. So there's that benefit. So when you get into this groove down here, you go a lot tighter circles to make sure you get down deep down into that groove. And it's not really as important because the groove will hold the paint and the epoxy. But I still like to get down in there to make sure that coating that they put on these cups comes off of there. That's the most important thing, is to make sure that coating gets off of there. And then you still got to do the bottom because you want to get a nice coating on the bottom of the epoxy. So all I'm doing here is I'm taking the sandpaper, folded up just a little bit to get down into that groove, because I've noticed that there was a little bit of that leftover design in that groove, just a little bit, and it's coming out very nicely. So, and there we have it. It's all sanded down. So the next step is to wash it up and get it ready to be put on my PVC pipes to be put on the turner ready for epoxy. So all we have to do for cleaning up is just simple soap and water at this point. So I'm going to go wash this with some soap and water. I'll be right back and you can see the finished product. But first I want to show you my hand. This is the hand that I've been holding it with. See how it's covered in all that sanding? That's not only the coating from the cup, but as also little residual shavings from the cup. So keep in mind that is, you got to remember, you're sanding metal. So it's nothing to worry about. I have been handling this barehanded for quite a while now, and I've never gotten metal shavings. So that is not something that you really need to worry about unless you go with really heavier grit. Then you run the risk of getting metal shavings. Or you start digging in with your scraper. Then you can dig in and start cutting out shavings. But that's why I try to stick with the 220 sandpaper, because it lessens that risk. So again, I will be right back with this all nice and washed up, and I'll show you what happens after I wash this up. It's just plain soap and water. I used on dish soap. Whatever dish soap you use, just regular soap and water. So I will be right back. All right, everybody, we're back. For you, it's instant. For me, it's been about 5 minutes. Got everything all washed up. My hands are even clean. You can see everything just washed right off. The water almost took it right off immediately. So once this is all clean, just using regular dish soap and water, you can even feel a difference in the cup. You can feel the roughness to it. So it's ready to be put on however you have your setup. So I use PVC pipes that I've adapted to my turners. And then what I love to use are these little adapters. So what I love about these things is that you can, adjust the sizes. You just pop them apart, slide them right down on the PVC, slide the cup down, push it right in. And then the way I have mine set up is that I have threaded adapters. I just thread it right on and she's ready to turn. So, but when you're ready to go at this point, before you do anything to it, remember that as you're touching it with your bare hands, all the oil and everything from your hands is getting on there. One of the last steps before I do anything to it is that I always wipe it down with some alcohol to make sure that there's no residual oils from your skin or anything from the air or anything got on it. Some people like to use, the makeup brushes or makeup pads or anything like that. I don't like to use that because I've found that they tend to leave uh, little furs and everything from the sanding on there. And I end up usually having to use a lighter or something to that effect to burn them off because there's no real way you can pick them off. And I've actually ended up having gotten some in my epoxy at times. So what I found is just those regular rags just work a lot better. Since I've turned to the rags, I've never had an issue of fibers being stuck to my cups after the sanding. So I hope this has been educational. That because this concludes how to prep a cup before getting ready to apply epoxy. The next step you're going to do is you're going to paint whatever base coat on there. I use paint primer paint, paint and primer in one spray paint. So, and I'll show you guys that in the next video when we do the base layer of the epoxy and glitter. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.